What's up, everybody? I felt like talking a little bit, so you get a little moto vlog thing today. I'm having a pretty good day so far. Oh, bump. Having a pretty good day so far. Just leaving school. I'm doing well in class. Math isn't uh, too difficult for me right now, so I'm happy about that. It's a beautiful day out, and now I get to go into work. But what I want to talk about today is, I don't know how you would phrase it, social responsibility for being out as trans. You know, I've been writing about this in my English class, so the question is, do as a transgender woman or people in general who identify as trans, do we have any kind of obligation to be out? Once you've transitioned and you're a contributing member of society, uh, do we have an obligation to be out, even if maybe you can pass as stealth or whatever you call it these days? Because otherwise, we wouldn't have good examples of successful trans people after they've transitioned, because we have so many examples and so many stories of trans people as they begin their transition. There, hope that's better. Like at the beginning of their transition, during the most challenging time in their lives, um, when they're getting used to everything, we were awkward. Um, it's not a pretty process by any means, and that is by far the most well-known process for uh, being transgender. I don't know, I just feel like the average person doesn't have a good understanding, and they don't have exposure to someone who transitioned 20 years ago, with the exception of a handful of well-known celebrities like Laverne Cox, and then you have Caitlyn Jenner. But even then, like Caitlyn Jenner or Chelsea Manning, their transitions were very public. They're recent. Um, the question is, do those of us who transitioned a long time ago have an obligation to kind of help share our stories and kind of set a good example and help raise awareness in that regard? So I've always kind of asked myself that question. I transitioned 13 years ago. I'm 30. I transitioned when I was 17 years old. I went through high school. It was well, most transitions of the time, it was challenging. I had lots of issues, all on its own, and trying to raise awareness. At that stage when I was transitioning, I would go to someone and say, "Well, I'm transgender," and then have to define what that means, because they've never heard of that concept ever before in their lives, except for cross-dressing or whatever. So that was the battle. Now, the great thing now is that most people know what that term is, and so kind of, they know what that. It's kind of good and bad. They know what that term is. They're familiar with the concept, and they've already stereotyped it in their mind. So while you don't have to build from the ground up when you come out to somebody now, you are having to fight more preconceived notions of what being transgender really means and what their expectations are of you now that you've come out to them. So since I transitioned and when full time, all of that, it was so long ago. It's hard for me to really remember how it felt and how things went, because it's been so long. I got to a point where I was like, okay, I passed well enough. people aren't giving me a hard time on a regular basis, and try to forget about it. I like just kind of put everything trans out of my mind. I didn't have any trans friends, didn't have any involvement in any of it. I was just did my own thing and took hormones every day. Just and I didn't even really see doctors. I just kind of like, okay, I've gotten to this point. Can I just forget any of this ever happened? Which did more harm than good in the long run. Doing something like that, it was nice to be able to kind of move on from it, but at the same time, it caused issues for me in accepting myself. You know, the awkwardness and the discomfort I had from being trans in general, I never really worked through. I just kind of buried it. Anyways, that's a whole other issue. I'm working through that now, trying to talk about it, obviously. But back to the question at hand. Do I have an obligation to make it known in pertinent instances to those around me that I'm trans, and you know, I feel like I'm doing well. I'm gainfully employed. I have what some people could call a career. You know, I have a family. I feel like I'm well adjusted. I don't know. I also like to think that I pass, and that the majority of people in my life don't suspect that I'm trans. I like to think that. That's my ego, self-confidence. I don't know. It's probably more ego than anything. One of my a big fear of mine, like a huge fear, is that I come out and like, well, you know, I'm transgender, and they're like, oh yeah, I always suspected, and like that would just shatter my self-image, I don't know, self-confidence. When I mean, it's not that big of a deal in the long run. Like, okay, you know, I never really put that much effort into into a lot of things. As far as like my appearance, I do like to look feminine, and I like to look nice. I want to be pretty, but I don't like makeup. I never really did voice training. I'm self-conscious about my voice. I hate the way my head looks. You know, I have all sorts of self-image problems. But if someone were to, oh, jeez. Oh, big truck guy. It just wouldn't be that hard for me to hear someone's, I don't know, statements on my passability to kind of nuke my self-confidence in that regard. And I think that's been a big fear for me coming out at all. Not to mention, I'm totally terrified of how that would impact my social interactions at work. You know, thankfully, my workplace, I don't have any concerns about being out of my workplace as far as my job safety or really even personal safety. It's a very liberal employer. The insurance they provide is inclusive of transgender coverage, which is awesome. More on that later. But just the thing that's always stopped me is like, why does it need to go into the workplace? Why do I need to? I have zero, like there's zero reasons for any of this to be in your face for anybody. It doesn't need to be there. But there are times when it is pertinent. You know, I've had coworkers make transphobic comments, especially when Caitlyn Jenner was coming out, or Chelsea Manning, and all the news. When the news was heavily focused on it, the bathroom bills lately. You know, it's interesting to kind of hear people talk about all of that when you aren't openly out as trans, because you'll get people to come up to you and, you know, say a lot of negative things about it, having no idea I'm trans. And you're like, okay, wow, I had no idea you were such a jerk. thanks. But like, I've always stayed silent, just kind of nodding my head like, oh yeah, it's kind of silly, when really I had the opportunity to say, hey, like that's messed up, and I'm trans, and try to, I don't know, educate them. Is that even like? I guess it's an opportunity to change their viewpoint, though it's in no way guaranteed to change their viewpoint, and it really kind of just opens me up to risk. But I don't know. I'm I'm just trying to get more comfortable with the topic and myself, and really being open as being trans. Like I feel kind of cringy thinking about casually discussing how my status as being transgender, and everything that goes along with that. It just makes me uncomfortable, but I don't want it to. I want to get past that. Not that I think so many people are watching this, but anyone that does watch this, what do you think? Personally, I think I'm in the spot where I don't feel like it's an obligation to kind of out yourself or to set a good example or anything like that. You're in no way obligated. There's so many situations where it could just be flat out dangerous to do that, where you need to stay silent just for your own protection. But I feel like in the instances where those of us are strong enough emotionally and feel like we're in a safe enough situation where we could do that, maybe we should. It's because if we never do, if no one ever stands out and it's never publicized, then we go nowhere. The public image and the stories people have of anyone that's transgender won't change. They need more exposure to transgender people, and they need to see how everybody is, not just the small sample size of celebrities and tabloid coverage or Senate discussions about how being transgender could be used as a cover for child molestation or pedophiles going into a bathroom, which is just awful. So I hope that makes sense to everybody. I'm just trying to work through it in my own way.